Nobody else would have noticed. That was the thing about Nia Brooks. She didn't try to stand out. She didn't raise her hand or clear her throat or draw attention to herself in a room that was never designed to include her. She simply watched. And she watched with the patient, unhurried attention of someone who had learned that the truth usually shows itself, if you give it enough time. She had been watching Ethan Cole for most of the evening. The Reed Foundation Gala filled the grand ballroom of the Harrington Hotel that night. Chicago spread itself across the windows in long ribbons of light. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen stars. 300 guests moved between tables dressed in suits and gowns that cost more than most people earn in a year. A string quartet played something graceful beneath the vaulted ceiling. Malcolm Reed stood at the center of all of it. At 51, he had built Reed Global from a regional consulting firm into one of America's most trusted corporate names. He carried that history quietly, without performance. People noticed him anyway. They always did. He had just finished thanking a donor when he felt a gentle tap against the side of his arm. He looked down. The girl standing beside him couldn't have been older than 8. Dark curls pulled into neat braids. A faded blue bracelet resting against her wrist. She held a small paper cup of sparkling cider with both hands, the way a child holds something they don't want to spill at an important event. Her eyes were fixed on a point several feet away. "Sir," she said quietly. Malcolm smiled. "Having a good time tonight?" She didn't smile back. She turned her gaze toward him, steady and deliberate. "Don't trust your bodyguard." Malcolm blinked. The music continued. Glasses clinked at a nearby table. Someone laughed at something said across the room. The ballroom performed its elegant normalcy without any awareness that 4 words had just changed the temperature of the air around one man. He lowered himself slightly so he could meet her eye level. "What did you say?" Nia looked back toward the man standing near the ballroom entrance. Ethan Cole. Head of Security. 11 years at Malcolm's side. Ethan stood exactly where he always stood. Alert. Composed. His dark suit pressed immaculately. His posture steady without being rigid. He was speaking with a hotel manager, moving through the evening with the quiet efficiency that had made him indispensable for over a decade. "Don't trust your bodyguard," Nia said again. Her voice didn't waver. Malcolm studied her face carefully. He had learned over many years to read people quickly. What he saw in the girl's expression was not fear. Not imagination. Not the nervous excitement of a child making up a story for attention. It was certainty. "Why would you say that?" he asked. Nia's fingers tightened around the paper cup. "Because he keeps listening to someone." Malcolm frowned. "Listening?" "He keeps touching his ear." She paused. "Like someone is talking to him." Malcolm looked across the room toward Ethan. The bodyguard adjusted his collar briefly. His hand fell back to his side. Nothing more. Security personnel wore communication devices. That was entirely standard. He straightened and offered her a gentle smile. "You don't need to worry. Ethan works for me." Nia didn't smile. She looked toward the stage, then back toward Ethan. Her expression held the particular quality of someone who has seen something they can't unsee. Then Ethan turned. His eyes swept across the crowd with professional ease. For a fraction of a second, they landed on Nia. She froze. Ethan's expression didn't change. He offered a polite smile before looking away. That was the thing that stopped Malcolm cold. Ethan never smiled during security detail. Not once in 11 years. A chill settled in his chest despite the warmth of the room. Around them, the gala sparkled and hummed. Nobody noticed the small girl standing beneath the chandelier. Nobody noticed the question now taking shape in Malcolm Reed's mind. And nobody noticed Ethan Cole quietly pressing one finger against his ear, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. The evening moved forward. The chill did not leave. Malcolm tried to dismiss it. He circulated through the room, shook hands, exchanged the right words with the right people. The scholarship presentations began. Applause rose and fell in warm, generous waves. Yet every few minutes he found himself glancing back toward Ethan. He didn't like the habit. Ethan had protected him through hostile acquisitions, press controversies, and years of high-profile events. Trust was not built overnight. It was built through a decade of showing up exactly when it mattered. Still. Once a question entered the mind. Across the ballroom, Nia remained at a volunteer table near the scholarship display. She was supposed to be enjoying the evening. Instead, she watched. Every time Ethan moved, her eyes followed. At first Malcolm thought she was simply nervous. Then he began noticing what she was noticing. Each time Ethan stopped walking, his fingers drifted toward his right ear. Brief. Subtle. A touch and release. Then his hand dropped again. The master of ceremonies announced the beginning of the foundation scholarship presentation. Spotlights swept the stage. Guests turned forward. Malcolm was preparing to walk toward the podium when Nia appeared beside him again. She moved quietly, almost invisible among the crowd. "Sir," she said softly. He looked down. Her small fingers were tied around the faded bracelet. "He is doing it again." Malcolm followed her gaze. Ethan stood near one of the ballroom exits. For a brief moment his head tilted. His lips moved. Not enough for conversation. Just enough for acknowledgement. Then he returned to scanning the room. Malcolm exhaled. "Security personnel wear communication devices," he said quietly. "That's completely standard." Nia nodded. "I know." The answer surprised him. "Then why are you concerned?" She looked toward Ethan for a moment longer. "Because he only touches his ear when nobody is looking." The words caught somewhere in Malcolm's chest before he could talk himself past them. Before he could respond, applause erupted. His name had been announced. He offered Nia a reassuring look. "I need to give my speech." She nodded politely. But she didn't leave. "Just be careful," she whispered. Malcolm stepped onto the stage beneath the bright lights. Hundreds of faces turned toward him. Cameras flashed. The room celebrated his foundation and the work it had done. But as he approached the podium, he noticed movement near the rear entrance. Ethan. Partially visible behind a marble column. His hand rising once more toward his ear. Then, for the briefest second, Ethan's eyes shifted toward a man Malcolm had never seen before. The stranger disappeared immediately into the crowd. A strange chill crossed Malcolm's shoulders. For the first time that evening, he found himself wondering whether Nia had been watching the right person, for entirely the right reasons. The applause faded. The crowd shifted into its after-speech rhythm. Malcolm stepped down from the stage and immediately felt Ethan appear beside him. "Excellent speech, sir." The board members would like a few minutes before the scholarship presentation. Malcolm studied him carefully. Expression steady. Everything composed. Nothing out of place. Then Ethan touched his ear. Just for a second. His hand dropped again. "Everything all right?" Ethan asked. "Of course," Malcolm said. He excused himself and crossed the ballroom toward Nia's table. She was not eating the chocolate cake placed in front of her. She was not looking at the stage decorations. She was watching Ethan with the focused patience of someone waiting for a pattern to complete itself. "You saw something else," Malcolm said quietly, sitting beside her. Nia glanced around to confirm no one was within hearing distance. Before the gala started, Malcolm folded his hands. "Tell me." She looked down at the bracelet. "My grandma works here sometimes. She got a shift for tonight. He came with her this afternoon." She swallowed. "I got lost looking for the ballroom." Malcolm waited. "I ended up near the underground parking garage." The sounds of the gala seemed to recede around them. I saw your bodyguard there, she continued. He was talking to somebody. A man wearing a grey coat. Malcolm thought immediately of the stranger who had vanished from the ballroom only minutes ago. What were they doing? Nia frowned, reaching through her memory carefully. The other man gave him something. What? A black box. A small, cold knot formed in Malcolm's chest. Did you see what was inside? She shook her head. No. But after the man left, your bodyguard put it inside a gift bag. What kind of gift bag? Silver. With a gold ribbon. Malcolm felt the knot tighten. Hundreds of gifts and donation packages had arrived throughout the day. Nobody would have questioned another item being placed among them. Then what? Nia looked directly at him. He looked around to see if anyone was watching. Before either of them could say another word, a hotel employee moved quickly across the ballroom floor carrying a large silver-wrapped package with a gold ribbon. The employee approached Malcolm's assistant and handed it over. Special delivery for Mr. Reed. Nia's face went still. Her eyes locked onto the package. Then she whispered 5 words that made Malcolm's pulse stagger. That is the same gift bag. He stared at the package moving toward the presentation table. The gold ribbon shimmered beneath the chandeliers. It looked elegant. Harmless. The kind of beautiful, expensive thing that appeared at every major charity event without a second glance. Are you certain? He asked quietly. Nia nodded immediately. I remember the ribbon. How? One corner is folded the wrong way. She didn't point. She didn't need to. It looked exactly like that in the garage. Malcolm stood slowly. Stay here. Nia caught his sleeve before he could step away. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. Please don't tell him what I said. Why? She hesitated. Because in the garage, when he looked around, he looked scared someone might see him. Malcolm held her gaze for a moment. No confusion in her eyes. No drama. Only a child trying to communicate something she understood mattered. He gave a small nod. He crossed the room toward the presentation table. His assistant smiled when he approached. Another donation package, sir. It arrived about 20 minutes ago. Who delivered it? She checked the attached card. Her smile faded slightly. There's no name. Malcolm looked at the package again. No sender. No explanation. Used a gift that had appeared from nowhere in the middle of the foundation's largest fundraising event of the year. Don't open it yet, he said. The assistant blinked. Sir. Just leave it where it is. She nodded, clearly confused. Malcolm turned, and nearly walked into Ethan. There you are, Ethan said. The board members are looking for you. Malcolm kept his expression neutral. I'll be there shortly. Ethan's eyes shifted briefly toward the silver package. Less than a second. Nia caught it from across the ballroom. So did Malcolm. Everything okay? Ethan asked easily. Why wouldn't it be? Ethan chuckled. Just checking. Then, automatically, his fingers rose toward his ear again. That same small, habitual movement. Then his hand dropped. He walked away. Malcolm watched him disappear into the crowd. Then he looked back at the package. Something he had missed before caught his eye now. Tucked beneath the fold of the gold ribbon was a small white label. He stepped closer. A parking sticker. Lower level bay issued that afternoon. The same garage where Nia had watched Ethan meet the stranger in the grey coat. Malcolm slipped the sticker into his pocket and returned to Nia's table. You were right about the garage, he said quietly. She nodded. Not surprised. Not triumphant. Are you going to tell him? She asked. Malcolm looked toward Ethan. The bodyguard stood near the ballroom entrance, speaking into a handheld radio. The image of dependability. The image of 11 years. No, Malcolm answered. Not yet. Something in Nia's expression relaxed. Good. Why good? She glanced around before answering. Because if he's hiding something, he'll stop the moment he thinks you're watching. The clarity of it caught him off guard. It was exactly the reasoning his own corporate investigators used before initiating any sensitive inquiry. Observe first. Move when you have everything you need. He almost smiled. His phone vibrated. A message from his executive assistant. Board members waiting in conference room 3. Malcolm stood. I have to attend a meeting. Nia's expression immediately tightened. Now. Just a few minutes. He looked toward the gift table. Nobody touches that package until I return. She seemed to accept that. He walked toward the private conference area beyond the ballroom, Ethan following. At the appropriate distance behind him. As always. As every day for 11 years. Malcolm entered the conference room. Inside, board members discussed scholarship funding, expansion proposals, and partnerships. Malcolm engaged with the words required of him. He smiled when smiling was expected. But his thoughts did not leave the ballroom. 20 minutes later, he stepped back into the corridor. And found Nia running toward him. Not frantically. Not frightened. Determined. She stopped a few feet away, catching her breath. Something happened. Malcolm's stomach dropped. What? Nia pointed toward the ballroom. The package is gone. A short pause. And I saw who took it. Who? He asked. Nia glanced over her shoulder, then back. A woman wearing a hotel jacket. An employee? She shook her head. I don't think so. They moved back toward the ballroom together. The gala continued around them. Music. Laughter. Elegantly arranged people performing their evening for one another. The presentation table where the silver package had sat was now empty. Malcolm found his assistant nearby. Where is the gift? He asked. She looked confused. I thought you'd had it moved. A chill spread through his chest. No. She glanced around anxiously. A hotel employee collected it about 10 minutes ago. She said it needed to go to the donor display room. Malcolm looked at Nia. The girl lowered her eyes. It led her to a quieter corridor beside the ballroom. The gala sound softened behind them. Tell me exactly what you saw. Nia took a breath. After you left for the meeting, I stayed near the volunteer table. A woman walked over to the gift. She looked around first. She paused. Then she touched her ear. Malcolm went very still. Nia noticed immediately. The same way he does. The hallway felt colder. You're certain? Yes. Malcolm looked back toward the ballroom entrance. Ethan stood at a security checkpoint, speaking with hotel staff. Unurried. Es authoritative. The image of a man who has nothing to hide. But if the woman had truly been unauthorized, why had security allowed her to remove the package? Unless someone had already told them not to question her. Malcolm reached for his phone and typed one message directly to the head of security operations at Reed Global. Access all hotel camera feeds from tonight. Start with lower-level parking and ballroom service areas. Do not alert anyone. The reply arrived in less than 30 seconds. Working on it now. He slipped the phone away. Nia looked up at him. Do you think they'll find something? He looked toward the ceiling where security cameras watched every corridor, every elevator, every entrance and exit in silence. Hundreds of lenses. Patient and indifferent. I think, Malcolm said quietly, that cameras usually see what people think they're hiding. His phone vibrated. Camera review complete. You need to see this immediately. They moved to a private conference room on the same floor. Glass walls overlooking the city. Soft overhead lighting. The sounds of the gala reduced to a distant murmur. Malcolm opened the security report on his phone while Nia sat across the table. The footage was clear. Lower level B parking garage. 4:18 in the afternoon. Ethan Cole approaching a gray sedan. A woman stepping out to meet him. An exchange. A black case passed between them. Malcolm enlarged the frames. The black case was opened briefly on camera. Inside, a small electronic device. Compact. Purposeful. Not money. Not documents. A tracking device. He stared at the screen. They wanted to follow somebody, Nia said quietly. Malcolm nodded. Yes. Who? The answer seemed obvious. It was the one the package had been delivered to. Yet the security analysis accompanying the footage offered a different conclusion. He opened the final section of the report. The device was designed to monitor movement over long distances. Not for tracking a building or a vehicle fleet. For tracking a person. Malcolm looked at the timeline. 4:18, device placed into the silver gift bag. 7:12, gift delivered to the ballroom. 7:43, package removed. 10, highlighted in red, recovered item location unknown. His phone rang. Security operations. He answered immediately. Sir, we located the package. Where? A storage room near the ballroom service corridor. Was the device still inside? A brief silence. No, sir. Malcolm closed his eyes for just a moment. Someone removed it? Yes. Approximately 15 minutes ago. He looked toward the ballroom through the glass. Do we know who entered that room? That is why I called. The security chief lowered his voice. The camera outside captured one person. Malcolm waited. Ethan Cole. Nia covered her mouth. Malcolm said nothing. 11 years. Was he alone? No, sir. Someone was with him. A pause. Gregory Walsh. The conference room went completely still. Gregory Walsh. Vice-chairman of Reed Global. 15 years of board meetings and business decisions and private dinners and trust built across every kind of professional circumstance. A new notification appeared. Storage room footage uploaded. Malcolm pressed play. Granny video. Ethan entering first. Gregory following seconds behind. Neither man appeared rushed. Neither looked over his shoulder. Gregory handed Ethan a sealed envelope. Ethan opened it. Both men looked inside. And then, they smiled. A smile. Steady. The smile of two people who believe everything is going according to plan. Malcolm played the footage 3 times. Each time the picture grew heavier. There was no confusion in that storage room. No conversation that looked like a chance meeting. Only 2 men who had arranged this moment, arrived on schedule, and left satisfied. They were working together, Nia said quietly. Yes. The word fell like a stone. Malcolm stared at the dark phone screen. Gregory had attended family gatherings. Helped negotiate contracts worth hundreds of millions. Shared confidential strategy discussions that no outsider ever heard. And Ethan had been the one controlling Malcolm's physical access. His schedule. His routes. His proximity to every meeting. Together they had covered both doors. Another message arrived from security operations. New camera angle from the hallway beyond the storage room. A secondary angle, farther down the service corridor but clearer than the primary feed. Malcolm played the footage. Ethan and Gregory exiting the storage room together. Gregory leaving first. Ethan waiting behind for several seconds. Then Ethan removed something from his jacket pocket. He attached it to an object just outside the camera's direct view. Malcolm paused the frame. Zoomed in, the image sharpened enough. A black leather briefcase. Partially visible. The initials JH engraved on the handle. Malcolm's frown deepened. "That's not mine," he said. Nia leaned forward. "Whose is it?" "Jonathan Hayes, chairman of the National Education Foundation, currently partnering with Reed Global on the year's largest scholarship initiative." Jonathan had arrived at the gala earlier that evening carrying the same briefcase. Why would they put it there? Nia thought for a moment. Quiet. Careful. "Maybe they didn't want to follow you," she said slowly. "Maybe they wanted to follow him." Malcolm looked at her. The idea shifted everything. He had assumed from the beginning that he was the target. The package had been delivered in his name. The gift had been intended for his table. But the device had ended up attached to someone else's briefcase. Before he could follow the thought further, another message arrived from security operations. "We found the contents of the envelope." He opened the attachment. Enhanced photographs from the storage room footage. Gregory briefly exposing the documents while handing them to Ethan. Several pages visible for a moment. Financial projections. Partnership agreements. Acquisition plans. Malcolm recognized them immediately. Reed Global Property. Confidential files scheduled for a private executive meeting next week. Files Gregory should never have removed from company archives. "What is it?" Nia asked. Malcolm set the phone slowly on the table. "Company secrets." Neither of them spoke. Then the conference room door opened. Malcolm looked up. Gregory Walsh stood in the doorway. Behind him stood Ethan Cole. The room compressed around that moment. Gregory stepped inside with the same polished composure he displayed at every shareholder meeting. Ethan remained near the door, his eyes moving across the room in one practiced sweep. The city lights reflected against the glass walls behind Malcolm, turning the room into a frame of silent tension. Gregory smiled first. "There you are." Warmly. "Easily. We have been looking everywhere for you." Malcolm set his phone face down on the conference table. 25 years of negotiation helped him keep his expression exactly where he needed it. "Have you?" Gregory moved into the room. "The donors are asking questions. People are beginning to wonder where the host disappeared to." Ethan remained near the doorway. For the first time all evening, Malcolm noticed something missing from the bodyguard's expression. The easy confidence he normally carried seemed slightly compressed. Barely visible. "Back there." Nia sat quietly in her chair, hands folded in her lap. Neither Gregory nor Ethan paid particular attention to her. That oversight would matter more than either of them realized. "We were talking," Malcolm said calmly. Gregory glanced around the room with professional lightness. "About business?" "Among other things." For a fraction of a second, Gregory's smile thinned. Then it rebuilt itself perfectly. "Good. Because there's something we should discuss." Malcolm said nothing. Gregory moved toward the conference table. "The partnership announcement next month." Malcolm held his gaze steadily. "What about it?" Gregory folded his hands. "I think certain plans should be reconsidered." Malcolm stared at him. "You mean the plans you removed from company archives?" The room went silent with a finality that felt physical. Gregory's smile disappeared. A tense posture stiffened. Nia looked between the two men without moving. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then Gregory laughed softly. "I don't know what you're talking about." Malcolm turned his phone over and pressed the screen toward Gregory. The enhanced photographs filled the display. The storage room. The envelope. The documents. The footage of Ethan attaching the device to Jonathan Hayes' briefcase. Gregory's face changed. Not panic. Not surprise. Recognition. I knew the evidence existed. Ethan looked at the screen and lowered his eyes. The silence stretched. Finally Gregory exhaled. You should not have seen that. Malcolm stood slowly. Neither should you. Outside the conference room, footsteps moved through the hallway. Mature. Professional. Already in position. Gregory heard them. His expression darkened. You called them? Malcolm nodded once. The cameras called them, he said. Gregory turned toward Ethan. The bodyguard remained still. For the first time that evening, genuine uncertainty crossed Ethan's face. 11 years had just collided with something that couldn't be reasoned around. More footsteps approached. The conference room door opened wider. Raid global security officers entered without urgency. No raised voices. No confrontation. Used the particular certainty that belongs to people who already have everything they need. Gregory looked slowly around the room. Ethan lowered his head. Neither man resisted. Neither argued. Because the footage existed. The photographs existed. The deleted recordings had been recovered. The storage room camera had survived every attempt to remove it. And every frame of evidence told the same story. The conference room settled into quiet after both men were escorted away. The distant sounds of the gala drifted back through the hallway. Music. Applause. The warm, ordinary continuation of an evening that had no idea what had just occurred behind a closed door. Malcolm stood at the window. The Chicago skyline stretched across the night. Thousands of lights. Thousands of lives moving forward without awareness of what happened in the corners of other people's evenings. He stood there for a long moment, letting the weight of it settle. Years of trust had been broken. Assumptions that had felt like certainties had been quietly wrong. And none of the evidence that changed everything would have surfaced without a little girl at a volunteer table, quietly watching what everyone else had decided not to notice. He turned toward Nia. She was still in the same chair. The faded blue bracelet rested against her wrist. She looked small in the large leather seat. Not a witness. Not an investigator. Just an 8-year-old girl who had come to a charity gala with her grandmother. You were right, Malcolm said softly. Nia looked down. I was just paying attention. Ismail. Most people stop paying attention the moment they believe they already know someone. The words lingered. Security officers continued their work throughout the hotel. Investigators reviewed additional footage. Evidence was documented with careful precision. The truth, once it found its way into the light, moved quickly. The deleted recordings had been recovered. The missing package had been located. The confidential documents had been traced. Every thread connected to the same story. Several hours later, Malcolm returned to the ballroom. Scholarship recipients stood near the stage. Volunteers gathered around tables decorated in blue and gold. Many guests had no idea what had unfolded behind the scenes. Malcolm stepped back onto the stage beneath the crystal chandeliers. The room gradually quieted. Hundreds of faces turned toward the podium. Television cameras focused on the stage. Malcolm looked across the audience before speaking. Tonight we celebrated generosity, opportunity, and trust. His voice carried through the room. But I learned something important this evening. He paused. Sometimes the most valuable truth comes from the person no one expects. Murmurs spread gently through the crowd. Malcolm extended his hand toward the front row. Would you come up here? Nia froze when she realized he was looking at her. A quiet ripple of curiosity moved through the audience as the little girl made her way toward the stage. Her sneakers clicked softly against the polished floor. She walked with the careful dignity of someone trying very hard not to trip in front of 300 people. Malcolm knelt beside her so their eyes were level. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small velvet box. Inside rested a silver scholarship medallion, created for the foundation's highest youth honor. "This belongs to you," he said. Nia blinked. "Why?" Malcolm looked at her, and for a moment the ballroom, the chandeliers, the cameras, and the crowd all receded into background. "Because courage isn't about being the loudest voice in the room," he said. "Sometimes courage is quietly telling the truth, when nobody else chooses to look." The audience rose. Applause filled the ballroom from wall to wall. Nia stared at the medallion in her palm, then at the old blue bracelet resting on the same wrist. Camera flashes scattered light across the room like small stars. Beyond the stage, the city lights continued glowing through the tall windows. And Malcolm Reed, standing beside a little girl in a ballroom that had never been designed for her, felt something he had not expected to feel that evening. Gratitude. Not for the cameras that had recorded the evidence. Not for the investigators who had assembled the facts. Not even for the systems that had ultimately caught two men who had betrayed everything they were given. But for a child who had decided, in a room full of people who weren't paying attention, that speaking was worth the risk. Nia looked down at the medallion resting beside her old blue bracelet, and for a moment she simply smiled. The way children smile when they've done something right and feel the rightness of it in their whole body. There was no calculation in that smile. No performance. No awareness of cameras or headlines or the story that would be told later. Just the simple, clean satisfaction of having told the truth. The cameras had seen everything. But first, she had to speak. And that is the part the cameras can't record. The moment someone decides, against every reason to stay silent, that what they know matters enough to say out loud. Nia Brooks was 8 years old. She had a faded bracelet and worn sneakers and a paper cup of sparkling cider. She stood in a room that had never been built for her. And she changed everything in it. Not because she was powerful. Because she was paying attention. When everyone else had already decided there was nothing left to see.